A 16-year-old boy is sitting in front of a camera, fresh off scoring his first Premier League goal, and he is not nervous. He is not shy. He is not giving safe, diplomatic answers to avoid controversy. Instead, Max Dowman is doing something that most seasoned professionals would think twice about. He is picking Bukayo Saka ahead of Kevin De Bruyne. He is picking Bukayo Saka ahead of Jude Bellingham. He is telling the world, without hesitation, that his Arsenal teammate belongs above two of the most decorated and celebrated midfielders in world football right now. That moment tells you everything you need to know about where Arsenal are as a club, and more importantly, it tells you everything you need to know about where Max Dowman is as a person. This is not a child making a naive mistake. This is a teenager who has just scored his first Premier League goal for one of the biggest clubs in England, who is now being asked to name his best five-a-side team from world football, and who confidently, calmly, and deliberately puts four of his own Arsenal teammates into that lineup. Four Arsenal players in a best world five-a-side team, chosen by a 16-year-old who has just broken into the first team. The situation is remarkable. And the more you break it down, the more it reveals about the current state of Arsenal Football Club. Now, before we go any deeper into this analysis, think about what was actually at risk in a moment like this. When a young player enters the spotlight for the first time, the way they handle that spotlight shapes public perception immediately. If Dowman had stumbled, given boring answers, or failed to articulate his thoughts clearly, the story would have been about his lack of confidence or his immaturity. If he had been overly diplomatic and just named the obvious global superstars to avoid controversy, nobody would be talking about this at all. Instead, the situation is one where a 16-year-old has generated serious football debate. He has put his name next to the names of Kevin De Bruyne and Jude Bellingham in a conversation that is now spreading across football media. That is not an accident. That is a young man who is completely at home in his environment, completely comfortable in his club, and completely confident in his own football knowledge. And that matters far beyond a simple five-a-side team selection. If you want deeper analysis on stories like this, stories that reveal what is really happening inside the biggest clubs in world football, then hit that subscribe button right now. This channel breaks down exactly what these moments mean beneath the surface. Subscribe and you will never miss the full picture. Let us start from the beginning of this story and work through every detail carefully. Max Dowman scored his first Premier League goal against Everton over the weekend. That is the confirmed fact that set everything in motion. That goal, that moment, that milestone was the trigger for all of the media attention that has followed. For a 16-year-old playing in the Premier League, scoring your first goal is a defining moment. It is the kind of achievement that announces your arrival in the most powerful way possible. The evidence suggests that Arsenal as a club are in a period where young talent is not just being developed, it is being thrown into the fire and asked to deliver at the highest level. Dowman is the latest example of that. A teenager stepping onto one of the most demanding stages in English football against Everton in the Premier League and scoring a goal that is now being discussed across the football world. Following that goal, Dowman was approached by Rising Ballers, a football media platform, and asked to put together his dream five-a-side team from world football. The budget given to him was £15 per player. This is a popular format in football content right now, where players assign fictional price tags to their selections and try to build the best team possible within that budget. What Dowman selected is what makes this entire story so fascinating. Let us go through each position one by one, because every single choice he made reveals something important. Starting in goal, the article does not specify a goalkeeper choice from Dowman, so the focus here is on the outfield selections, which is where the real story lives. In defence, Dowman chose his Arsenal teammate Ben White. This is already a bold call. The situation is that Ben White was not selected ahead of just one elite defender. Dowman was presented with options including Rico Lewis of Manchester City and Achraf Hakimi of Paris Saint-Germain. Both of those are world-class players. Hakimi in particular is one of the most exciting and technically gifted right-backs on the planet, playing for one of the wealthiest and most high-profile clubs in European football. Rico Lewis has established himself as one of the most intelligent and tactically sophisticated young defenders in the Premier League under Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. And yet Dowman chose Ben White. Now, the analysis here is not about whether Ben White is objectively better than Hakimi or Rico Lewis on a global scale. The reality for the club is that what this selection reveals is the level of trust, admiration, and respect that Dowman has developed for his Arsenal teammates. When you are 16 years old and you have been training alongside these players every single day, you see things that the outside world does not see. You witness qualities in training that statistics and highlight reels cannot capture. Dalman picking Ben White is a statement about what he sees at the training ground every single morning. Moving into midfield, this is where the selections become even more layered and more interesting. For his first midfield spot, Dalman chose Arsenal captain Martin Odegaard. The article is clear that this was a surprise pick, and it is worth sitting with that for a moment. The players he passed over in order to select Odegaard were Rodri of Manchester City and Bernardo Silva, also of Manchester City. Rodri won the Ballon d'Or. That is not an opinion. That is a fact on record. Rodri is considered by many in world football to be the best midfielder on the planet. His reading of the game, his ability to control tempo, his defensive intelligence, and his leadership qualities are recognized at the very highest level. Bernardo Silva is equally regarded as one of the most technically gifted and consistent midfielders in world football, with multiple Premier League titles and Champions League experience to his name. Dalman looked at both of those options and said, Martin Odegaard, the evidence suggests that from inside the Arsenal dressing room, Odegaard is seen as something truly special. The captain leads the team, sets the standard in training, and clearly commands the deep respect of even the youngest players at the club. For Dalman to place him above Rodri and Bernardo Silva is a powerful statement about the influence and quality that Odegaard projects on a daily basis within that environment. For his second midfield selection, Dalman chose Declan Rice. The article describes this as not much of a surprise, and the analysis here supports that framing. Rice is described as a mentor to Dalman. That word is important. Mentor. This is not just a teammate. This is someone who has taken the time to invest in a 16-year-old, to guide him, to help him develop as a player and as a person. The relationship between Rice and Dalman clearly goes beyond the professional. It is personal. And it is the kind of relationship that shapes careers. The players Dalman passed over for the Rice selection were Phil Foden of Manchester City and Mohamed Salah. That is another statement. Foden is one of the most celebrated English players of his generation, a serial winner with Manchester City. Salah has been one of the most consistent and clinical attackers in Premier League history, and Dalman chose Declan Rice ahead of both of them. That tells you about loyalty. It tells you about what Rice means to Dalman personally. But it also tells you that within the Arsenal squad, there is a depth of belief in each other that extends across every generation of player, from the most experienced internationals right down to the newest 16-year-old first-team scorer. Now we arrive at the most debated selection of the entire lineup. In the attacking role, Dalman chose Bukayo Saka over Kevin De Bruyne and Jude Bellingham. The situation is that this is the choice that has generated the most discussion and the most reaction. De Bruyne is widely regarded as one of the greatest midfielders of his generation, a player whose vision, passing range, technical quality, and ability to affect games is almost unmatched in world football. Bellingham has established himself as one of the most complete young players on the planet, operating at Real Madrid, one of the most demanding clubs in the world, and consistently delivering at the highest level. Dalman picked Saka over both of them. Now, the article does acknowledge that this is not completely shocking given the form of all three players this season, and the analysis supports that framing. Saka has been one of the most consistent and important players in the Premier League for several seasons now. His ability to operate in tight spaces, his directness, his technique, his work rate, and his delivery in key moments have made him one of the most feared attackers in English football. But beyond the statistics and the performances, the reality for Dalman is that he sees Saka every single day. He trains with him, he watches him at close range. He understands what Saka brings to a football environment, not just in matches, but in the culture of the squad, in the dressing room, and on the training pitch. When you have that level of access to a player, your appreciation for them goes far deeper than anything a television audience can develop by watching 90 minutes on a Saturday afternoon. Dalman calling Saka over De Bruyne, and Bellingham is his expert testimony from the inside. It carries a different kind of weight. Finally, in the striker position, Dalman chose Lionel Messi. He described Messi as, and these are his words, the GOAT. The options he was presented with included Kylian Mbappe and Erling Haaland, and he still chose Messi. The evidence suggests that for Dalman and for his generation of footballer, Messi remains the reference point, the ultimate, the player against whom all others are measured. That is a perspective that is completely consistent across elite football globally, and Dalman expressed it without hesitation. Now, let us zoom out from the individual selections and look at the bigger picture, because this story is about much more than a five-a-side team. The situation is that Arsenal are currently described in the article as almost certainly the best team in world football right now. That is a significant statement. And it is framed as the reason why it should come as no real shock that most of their players would get into a best world lineup. Think about that for a moment. A club, an English club, is being described as the best team in world football. And a 16-year-old who has just broken into that team is selecting four of his teammates in his dream world, five-a-side squad. The alignment between the club's status on the global stage and the belief of the youngest player in the squad is perfect. Dalman does not see himself as a young kid, lucky to be around great players. He sees himself as part of a group that is genuinely the best in the world. That mindset is not something you can manufacture. It is not something you can teach in an academy session or install through a team meeting. It comes from environment. It comes from the culture that has been built at Arsenal. It comes from what the players around Dalman are showing him every single day through their performances, their professionalism, and their standards. The Lamine Yamal comparison. The article closes by drawing a comparison between Max Dalman and Lamine Yamal. The comparison is being made by people within the football world who have watched Dalman closely, and it is one that carries enormous weight. Lamine Yamal is one of the most talked about teenage talents in world football. He has already established himself as a key player at the highest level, performing in major international tournaments and delivering consistently in one of the toughest leagues in Europe. To have that comparison attached to your name at 16 is a marker of the level of expectation surrounding Dalman. The evidence suggests that the people making that comparison believe Dalman has something genuinely rare. Not just talent in terms of technique and athleticism, but the mental makeup, the composure, and the footballing intelligence that separates exceptional players from simply good ones. The way Dalman handled the 5A-side interview supports that view. He was not trying to impress anyone. He was not playing to the camera or giving crowd-pleasing answers. He was giving his genuine football opinion, backed by his real experience of being inside one of the best squads on the planet, and he delivered those opinions with the calm confidence of a player who knows exactly who he is. This story also opens a broader conversation about what it means for a young player to break into a top club at 16 in the modern era. The situation is that the spotlight is immediate and intense. There is no gradual build, there is no quiet introduction. The moment you score your first Premier League goal, the cameras are on you. The media wants to know who you are, what you think, how you carry yourself. And every answer you give either adds to your reputation or creates doubts about your readiness. Dalman walked into that spotlight and handled it with remarkable maturity. He spoke about his teammates with genuine warmth and conviction. He made football arguments that are defensible and interesting. He showed personality without showing arrogance. He demonstrated loyalty to the people around him at Arsenal while also giving Lionel Messi his flowers as the greatest of all time. That balance, being loyal to your club while still being able to appreciate greatness wherever it exists in world football, is not easy to find. It requires a level of social intelligence that goes beyond just being a good footballer, and Dalman demonstrated it naturally, without any visible effort. What comes next for Dalman, based strictly on the facts presented, the evidence suggests that Max Dalman is now one of the most talked about teenagers in world football. His first Premier League goal has opened the door to a level of media attention and public interest that will follow him for the rest of his career. The question of how closely he will follow in the footsteps of Lamine Yamal is one that the football world is now genuinely asking. That question is not being asked casually. It is being asked because people who have watched him believe the comparison is real. The situation for Dalman is that he is at a club that is currently described as the best in the world. He has teammates who are among the most admired players on the planet. He has a mentor in Declan Rice who is clearly invested in his development. He has a captain in Martin Odegaard who commands the respect of every single player in the squad. And he is playing under a manager and within a system that is producing results at the very highest level. Every single element that a young player needs to develop into a top professional is in place for Max Dalman right now. The foundation is as good as it gets. And his own mentality, as demonstrated by everything in this story, appears to match the quality of the environment around him. The reality is that this story started as a simple piece of football content. A 16-year-old naming a five-a-side team, a fun, light-hearted exercise designed to generate engagement and discussion. But what it actually delivered was a window into the soul of the current Arsenal squad. 4 Arsenal players in a best world five-a-side team tells you about the culture at the club. Odegaard chosen over Rodri tells you about the captain's influence. Rice described as a mentor tells you about the human relationships inside the squad. Saka picked over De Bruyne and Bellingham tells you about what Dalman sees at close range every single day. And Messi, called the GOAT, tells you about the generation of player that Dalman represents. A generation that grew up watching the greatest of all time and is now walking out onto Premier League pitches themselves. The situation is that Arsenal are not just winning football matches right now. They are building something. They are creating an environment where a 16-year-old can score his first goal on the weekend, sit down in front of a camera on the Wednesday, and confidently tell the world that his teammates belong among the greatest players on the planet. That is what great clubs do. They make everyone inside them believe. And right now, Arsenal are doing exactly that. Max Dalman is 16 years old. He has 1 Premier League goal to his name, and he is already being compared to Lamine Yamal. The story is just beginning.